Nick has restored and repaired many beautiful muscle cars over the course of his career. His passion for these machines pushes him to do the absolute best he can do with every job. But of all the cars he's wrenched on, perhaps none has received the same level of recognition as his personal 1970 Dodge Challenger. Nick built his dream car to be the best possible replica of the car from the 1971 film Vanishing Point. Nick searched for years to find a numbers-matching 1970 U-Code Challenger. He bought the car with its original engine, but restored it with another 440, keeping the factory engine on the side to preserve it. For years now, he's wanted to restore the original Magnum power plant to its factory state, but has been too busy with other commitments. Finally, with all the parts ready and waiting, Nick has made the time to put his dream car's engine back together, and he wants to invite us into the engine room for the build.
Hi, I'm Nick and welcome to my shop. Well, you know, I've been waiting 5 years to get to my original 440 engine, which is the matching engine or matching number to my special car that I've always dreamed of, one of my favorite movies called the Vanishing Point, which was Kowalski driving a 1970 Challenger. And back then in the theaters, this is the poster they had, and this is the American version poster that they had. And anyways, just to get back to my engine, I've waited 5 years for this. Yes, it is a matching engine, and you know, when I was putting my car together, I had it at the body shop. I was restoring a lot of the stuff for the car. I never put time into building my engine. I was doing the dash, the heater box, the steering column, and a few other things, suspension and so forth. After 3 months being at the paint shop, metalwork, I got my car here. Then, of course, it just came one bare piece of metal. But you know me, I was so excited to get the car running. I said, let me start putting the car together. And I had another 440 engine on the side, detailed exactly the way it came from the factory. And I said, you know what? I'll put much on the side and I'll use the other test 440 engine, which I installed in my car to use in the past 4 or 5 years, which went well. It's still in the car, but right now, what I want to do is assemble the engine. What I'm putting together here is a simple factory, all original 440. The way it came from the factory, yes, 375 horsepower. Am I looking for more than that? No. Did I mill the heads? Did I mill the block? No. I got new pistons, and of course, this engine from the factory comes with 6-pack rods, like we're going to show you right now. It comes with 6-pack rods. I also had the pistons replaced, 30 overbore. These are forged pistons with valve reliefs. The original engine came with the same rods, of course, which I have here, the 6-pack rod. But the pistons that came with the original 440 don't come with valve reliefs. And if you wanted to show you guys, this is an original piston that came from the engine. And by the way, before I even bought the car, I flew out to Thunder Bay. I flew twice out there. I flew to Thunder Bay because the guy told me, or should I say, the seller told me that, Nick, the car is a matching engine to the car. And then he was telling me about a broken connecting rod. I go, how is that possible that you got half a connector rod and the engine was running, or should I say it broke and it stopped and did not do any block damage? So this is what I have. This is a cast piston. It's a 6-pack rod, broken in half. I don't have the other half. The seller kept it as a souvenir. And I'm very, very surprised that it did not do any damage in the block whatsoever. If you guys take a good look here, there is no welding, no sleeves, nothing whatsoever. Only a 30 overbore for the new pistons. And if you guys take a good look, there's holes where the wrist pin is. This is factory. And if you take a good look right here, I bought these pistons from Seal Power. They do not come with a hole. So I had Robert drill holes for me so I could get extra lubrication for the wrist pin. And these, of course, are forged pistons. That's what I found because I wanted to find a piston that's the highest, closest to the deck. This is a 2.061 compression height. But you know, I don't want to deck the block. I just want to keep it the way it came from the factory. So there you have it. And these are 6-pack rods. They were original on the 440 Magnums in 1970 also. So not only not being a 6-pack, it is a 440 Magnum full bow. Yes, the 6-pack rod came standard equipment on this engine. If you want to take a good look, if you guys take a look, if you want to know if it's a matching engine, the serial number is always stamped before the engine is installed in the car. Let me just show you guys. If you take a good look here, the engine is assembled, or should I say built, months before the car is delivered. Now my car was built in March 1970. So if you go a few months before that and the engine is assembled and delivered to the plant to get installed into the car, this is the date of the time the block was in the foundry, when the block was made. November 13, 1969. And if you take a good look here, there's the serial number, last 6 digits of the serial number of the VIN of the car. So there you have it. I also wanted to say, you know, I'd like to assemble it, detail it, and of course I will put on the dynamometer with the exhaust manifolds and all the details on it. Then after all that is done, I will have it in an engine stand beside my car. And here's a question I want to ask you guys. Now, my car is running very well with a test mule 440. Yeah, it's another 440. You open the hood, it's going to look exactly like they did from the factory. Would you guys put the matching engine in the car? Or just leave it beside as a display to the car and just kick the car with a non-matching engine? So if something goes wrong, I do not have to worry. The matching engine will be there in my shop safely without getting beaten up. What would you guys do? So I had the block sent out to a machine shop, which Richard owns Universal, what should I say it in English, Ville Benny, or should I say Universal Crankshaft, which Richard and has the shop there and he does a lot of my machine work. So I gave him the block with the pistons to blow it out for me, and he had a brand new rocker machine, and he goes, Nick, I got a brand new machine, I'm going to use that on your block. And he has an employee named Andrew that knows how to use it very well. So I brought him the block, I brought him the pistons, they did the piston to wall clearance the way I wanted, and then they had it delivered back to me, and here I am ready today to assemble it. Yeah, I can't wait to do it. But I want to do a simple rebuild. This is something that people put together, like most of you viewers, something you guys could do it back home. Nothing with special tools, nothing special. Now, if this was a racing engine, blueprinting, it would be a different world. But I want to do something simple, how an engine puts together, so you guys don't make any mistakes. Something simple. And I'm going to put on the rear seal, I'll show how it's done. When you put the crank bearings in, cam bearings in, and a few things. So this is how we start. We get our block, we bring it back here, we wash it thoroughly very well, and I do just a rough paint job on it. Then I brought it in here. So now, here we go. This is how we start. Let me show you. I start by installing the cam bearings. Well, I already have them installed because sometimes they take forever. And I'm not gonna have George, my cameraman, being here 4 hours like I have done in some 440s in the past. But I had them installed. Just to let you guys know, these are the bearings I used. They are from Durabond. Okay, this is the number for the 440, Hemi, 33, and so forth. Now, there are 5 journals in a camshaft, and they all have a certain area where they go. There's cam 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 journals. You got to make sure, and they are press fit. And just to let you know, there's an oil hole, as you can see, on all 4 bearings. There's one oil hole, which I'm going to show you in a minute where it goes, okay? But number 4, journal number 4, it has 3 holes, like a Y. 1 here and 2 on the top, because it feeds oil from the block through the cam, and then the cam is an opening like a passage that feeds oil to one side of the head, and then after that, oil to the other side. So as the cam is turning, it's shooting oil once in a while to one cylinder head, and then after that, it transfers over to the other side. So these are very important how you press them on. Let me show you an example. Since I got them in place, let me show you how good they are lined up. if you guys take a look through here, straight down into the main bearing journal, if you look straight down, you can see the light. You see how that hole is lined up with the bearing on the block? This is very important. Now, journal number 4, there's 3 openings, but we did check it. All 3 holes line up to the casting. So we got the 5 bearings installed. And of course, there's a special tool that's used to install the cam bearings. And a lot of people, I've noticed when they work at home, they don't change cam bearings. In many cases, they're good, but I change them anyways. I just wanted to show you that has to be in a perfect, like, it depends on the application, it depends on what engine you got to make sure they're in the right place. In the past, I have an older video how I installed the cam bearings on a 440. If you guys go back then, you'll see how I installed the bearings. Yeah, it took some time, but we got them done. Oh, another thing I want to ask, this is very important. When you guys install the cam bearings, a lot of people make this mistake. When you install one bearing at a time, of course, when you install one cam bearing, I have another used camshaft that I keep putting in one bearing at a time. Because let me tell you, if you put 5 cam bearings all at the same time, then when you put your cam in and it doesn't fit, it doesn't turn, you're going to wonder which cam bearing is giving me the problem. It's going to be very difficult to find out. So what I do is I install the last bearing, put the cam in, it turns free, take it out. Then you put cam bearing number 4. Then you put the cam back in, another used cam I should say, and then turn it, it works good, take it off. Then you put cam 3, a cam 4 and 2, cam bearing number 1. That's how you do cam bearings. You don't just install 5 and then put the cam and you can't get it in. Which after I'm going to put the camshaft in, you're going to see it's going to go in smoothly. A lot of guys make that mistake. Put the 5 cam bearings in and then you cannot install the cam, even with a hammer. So just to let you know, do that practice. I'm telling you, been there, done that, and I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so once the cam bearings are installed, I like to install a new bushing for the oil pump drive shaft. You just flip it over like that. It is a brass bushing, like so. So this is the bushing that sits in the block press fit where the oil pump drive goes through. Now before you install a cam, you want to press it in there. So I got an old gear, I put it like so, then I put it over here, like so. Then you take a punch, take a brass punch, take a hammer and a brass punch, and you smack it until it bottoms out. Which is already installed. I don't have to do it because it's already done. So just to let you know, I always replace that bushing. So that's all I've done so far. So after all that is said and done, the next step is the rear seal and the crankshaft. Now the crankshaft 440s Magnum all come with a steel crank. Now the crank was a bit scratched and worn out. So what Richard did is he had the crank cut undersized 10th thou. In other words, you thin it out by 10th thou on the main bearings and also on the connecting rods. So he cut it down to 10 undersized. And not only that, he also had the crank balanced to my connecting rods and to the new pistons. So you have to rebalance the engine, okay? So this damage happened with this crankshaft. I'm very surprised that the crank or the block did not get damaged at all. And you know, this is something that's a miracle. And you know, when the seller was calling me up, he tells me it's got a broken connecting rod and the engine has the block has no cracks at all, no damage at all. I was very surprised. But anyways, I bought it and here it is. So here's the steel crank. It's a pretty heavy piece. I'm still using the same crank that went through all this. So I'm ready to install it. First of all, when you cut the crank 10 undersize, you got to get main bearings 10 US, 10 undersize. I just wanted to say, you guys, in this case, I'm using Mali connector rod bearings and also main bearings. I just want to show you, these are the connector rod bearings I'm using. The dash 10 means it's 10 undersized. The same thing going for the main bearings, which I got here. So if you guys take a good look, you can see 10, 0, 10, 0.010. Okay? Now, you've cut the crank 10, 10. 10 on the rods, 10 on the mains. But also remember, you guys, when you open up these boxes, you take out the bearings. take a good look. Make sure they're stamped 10, because you might have a standard bearing or a 20 undersized bearing in the wrong box, or should I say packaging. So always take a good look when you do that. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn the block over. I'm going to install my upper main bearings and the ones with the hole. Why? This is where the oil feeds through the crankshaft, and then after that to the connector rods. So here we go. I'm going to lock this in place. Take a little bit of coffee. Okay, here we go. Now your hands have to be clean, okay, when you do this. If you guys take a look, these are the main bearings, the upper half bearings. If you take a good look, they're all marked, and I already verified that they all are 10 US. US stands for undersized. And the front 4 bearings go whenever you wish. Okay, here we go. I've done this millions of times. Make sure the block is truly dry, cleaned, and everything. And then you have a thrust bearing, which is the one in the middle, which is the middle bearing. This is the thrust bearing. This is the in play of the crank, which I'll show you guys after. Here we go. There's the 5 upper main bearings installed. Now, before we drop the crank in, we're going to put oil on the bearings anyways. But here's something that's a hit and miss. I'm going to show you, which I've done in a previous video. I'm going to install the rear seal. I am using a Velcro seal right here. And I'm going to show you guys how this is done. Like I said, when I do this job, 8 out of 10 times it will work. So I'm using Velcro, which is, they support me with all the gaskets on all my engines. And you know what? They make a great product, let me tell you. So, this is how we start. First of all, when you got the 2 halves in the same package, you want to make sure that these 2 halves belong together. So what do? Is I do this. Take a good look what's happening here now. See the way they're cut crooked? See, they're not cut straight. But when you put them together, if you take a good look, they're a perfect match. Okay? Now, here's the other trick now. You can take any half, they're both the same. Now, you got to install it into the block, which is the upper side, which is the block. You got to see that lip towards the crankshaft. Okay, the oil comes this way, the lip goes this way. This is the way you install it. So this is what I do now. I take some semi-lube and I just touch the seal on the inside, like so. Now I install it into the block. And I don't put it flat level. I offset it about 3/8 to 7/16 of an inch. George is going to show you guys what I mean. Take a good look. That's one thing every time I put an engine on the dyno, I always hope that. That's the first thing I look at while I'm breaking in the cam or any other reason. That's the first thing I look at, is that the rear seal does not leak oil. Like I said, it's a hit and miss. I do my best. I've used so many different seals, and I'm lucky in some cases, sometimes I'm not. But I'm going to do my best to show you guys what I got. All right, here we go. Next thing is we lubricate the bearings. I get some oil, which is, this is a 20W50 motor oil. It contains zinc because we're using a flat tappet original camshaft on this. And there we go. This is how I do it. Yeah, I use my fingers, they're clean, don't worry. Like so. Some people use a semi-lube. I'm not gonna use a semi-lube. You know why? I'm gonna have this ready within a few days or in a week or two. And then I'm gonna prime the engine. Then right after that, it's gonna go on the dyno. Because, I won't let the engine sit, because I will test it on the dyno right away. Even though you put a semi-lube, then you put on the dyno, then you run it, it gets washed away anyways. And then when you put the engine in storage, it's going to sit there with the oil stain on the bearings. There'll be no more grease, but it'll do no harm while it's sitting on the shelf. If you buy a crate engine from GM, Ford, or Chrysler, those engines have been built and sitting on the shelf before they're sold for years. There's no harm done. Okay, now the big moment. The biggest piece to put in the block is this heavy crankshaft. Now I installed the crank bolt on top so that I can turn the crank so I can install the piston, but I'll get to that later. My main concern right now is drop the crank in and put the 5 main caps, torque one cap down with, I know some people are going to say, Nick, plastic gauge, but you know what, I've been using it for years. They taught me this at GM when I used to work for GM for 5 years. I've been building engines for 51 years and this has worked for me. And we're looking for a clearance of 1 to 3 on the main bearings. If we fall upon that, we torque down all the main caps, then we go ahead and finish off the rear seal. And here we go. Now, to help you, now the engine stand, and you're now, let's say for example, you're working alone. This piece is pretty heavy. This is what I do. I tilt the engine stand on a certain angle, like so, but make sure you lock it. You lock it. Now you're going to carry the crank and drop it inside there. Got to be very careful because you don't want to scratch the crank hitting the block or anything. These are all mirror finish. So let's do our best. Here we go. There we go. You know, I used to pick them up like nothing when I was younger. Here I am. 51 years later, I'm still picking them up. Okay. You know, I don't know if I'm getting weaker or the things are getting heavier. Doesn't matter. So, here it is. This is a good indication. You know, when you just drop it in this and when it turns by hand, that's a good sign that, you know, like many cases, these 440 blocks don't need a line bore. A line bore is when you torque down the 5 caps and you have to pass a honing machine to make sure the block is not twisted or any main bearing surface or saddle on the block is damaged. When I had the block sent out before I had it bored out, I took a good look that if that connector rod did any damage to the block, and I looked at it myself, I looked at it at the machine shop, we took a good look and physically we did not see any cracks whatsoever. So now that I've dropped the crank in place, finally got my first part in the engine. I can't wait to see this thing running. And I'm going to put it in 5 main caps. And on one of them, I'm going to install the plastic gauge. Yeah, some people, but I did measure the journals on all of them just to be safe that they are 10 undersized. Even though the machine shop marks a 1-1, means 10 on the main, 10 on the rod. That's the way the machine shop marks it over there. And of course, this crank was balanced with the new pistons. If you see a drill mark right here, that's an indication that this engine was balanced. So let me put my 5 caps in, get some coffee, and here we go. And I also wanted to say that everything has to be cleaned very well, okay? And of course, I lubricated the threads on the bolts. You know, I put oil on them like that. I put oil on them like so. I let them drain overnight. You just want to make sure they're not dry. And then you torque them down so you have a nice, good torquing number. So let's get our bearings. Here we go. I just wanted to say that these bearings are 360 groove. You got a groove on those main bearings, and there you go again. Okay, 360 groove. In other words, it's feeding oil to the connector rods full time instead of 180 degrees. And again, I check it again. They are all marked 10 undersize. You know, I've looked at some engines, and you know, I found some with a from the factory. I have found some engines that were 360 groove and some were not. But the 180 will do the job. You know, this is not going to be a race engine. I'm not going to rev it high. It's going to be something simple. This is more than what I need. But anyways, this is the way I got them, and I'm going to put them in the way. You know, the only thing is, most important thing is, make sure you have good oil pressure once the engine is hot, and you got at least 35, 40, 45 pounds minimum on this engine hot idle. which we're going to see all that on a dyno. And I'm sure I've done this before and I had the oil pressure I was looking for. And of course, when I prime the engine, once it's assembled, before it goes to the dyno, I'm going to prime it. If I don't get that 70-75 pounds of pressure, the engine will not be sent to the dyno. It will be torn down to look what is going on. But now we're going to put the 5 main caps, and I'm going to put a plastic gauge on one main cap just to take a reading and see what my clearance is. And you guys, you cannot mix this up. I want to show you something. See? All the caps have a number. This is cap number 5. So this is going to go in the back. So now let me put some engine oil, like so. Wet it like so. And then you take your 2 bolts. And don't forget, it's very simple. On one side of the bearing there's a notch, the other one doesn't have it. So on the block, you match the notch with the notch. In other words, they have to be on the same side. Like so. Now I hope this is not a picky customer. You know what? I'm just gonna, like I said, this is gonna be like an assembly plant assembly. You know, the way Chrysler did it. Now, if this was a racing engine, it would be a totally different thing. Like the one behind me right here, this one belongs to my brother. Now that's gonna be blueprinted. Everything has to be 100%. So this is gonna be something like the assembly plant does. And this is my personal engine, and I'm gonna do it the way I want. And it's worked for me year after year after year. You know, cast iron rusts right away. You know, it gives it a brownish color, which, you know, you keep it as clean as possible as you can. But then again, it has done no harm to me whatsoever. I'm talking about just the rust color, not the rust stains. Now, these main caps are going to be torqued down to 85 foot-pounds. I don't need to look in the book for that. Okay, there we get the other caps, put them in place. Then I need the thrust bearing for this one, which is right here. And I've checked them all. They have all been marked 10 undersize. A thrust bearing is right here. It's got a bearing on the side also. The other bearings don't have a side. This is the bearing called the thrust side. Every engine has that. So the movement of the crank in the block. Never mind being the clearance between the bearing and the crank. It's the movement of the crank. So we're going to check that after. Like the only thing is I put oil on these bearings because I don't want to install it dry. Okay. You know, some people, they'll say, oh, Nick, you know, use gloves. You know what? You're right, but I can't use gloves. I can't. I've been doing it like this for so many years. I tried using gloves, but it's not easy. Not for me. Yeah, you know what? It is better for your health, but anyways, I don't know. Maybe I'm lucky so far. So, now I did not torque him down yet. And now if this crank does a turn, we have an issue. Here we go. So far, so good. Now, I'm going to torque down these bearing caps. Torque them down. Then I left one cap out so I can measure my clearance. I'm just going to put a thin bit of oil, very thin. Just thin a bit. Then I'm going to put some plastic gauge on this one. Then we're going to get a reading. But in the meantime, I'm going to torque the other ones down just to be, okay, wait. Let me torque them down first. 85 foot-pounds on a 440. Now let's torque it down, and hopefully this crank still turns. But I believe it will. Here we go. Okay, now they're all torqued down at 85 foot-pounds. Does the crank turn free? That's a good sign right there. Okay, so let's take now if the crank, of course, I'm sure it is, if it's cut perfect, so if the clearance reads on one journal, then they all should read the same. So let's put some plastic gauge on it. This is something that measures the clearance between the crankshaft and the bearing. Let's go give it a try and see where we got. And plastic gauge is a piece of plastic that gets squeezed. Look, there we go. There it is. So this is what we do now. We take this, put it right across the journal like so. Like that. You do not turn the crank right now. That's like about a 5/10 thickness, but we need to squeeze it down and see what we got. Now, I'll be using very different tools, micrometers and everything else to measure this. But in this case, I'm just doing it because like I'm doing it factory way. And I'm sure it should be good. I've done it a few times like this. And let's see what we got. So what I just did is I have the plastic gauge in the main cap. I'm going to torque it down. Do not turn the crank. I'm going to torque it down, take it off, and take a reading and see what we have. The more you squeeze it, the wider it gets. That's going to tell us our reading. Okay, let's see what we got. Let's see what we got. Here we go. There it is. Now we're going to compare it. See what we got. Try to get in there. The clearance is something like, that's 1.5 thou clearance. Maybe 1 3/4 of a thou, which is what I like. This is perfect. This is the clearance you want. Usually that's a thou to every 1 inch of the journal. So 1.5 to 2 thou is perfect as what I need. So now I know that the main bearings are good. I'm going to torque down the cap and then I'm going to proceed to the rear seal. So far everything is going good. Now I'm just going to put this bearing back in place. I'm going to put this cap back in place. Don't forget the machine shop, when they cut this, it's all cut even. So if you know one is good, the rest are all the same. Today's machine shops, a lot of them are CNC. They're very accurate. Sometimes they're all automated. He puts a crank in, cuts it, and I went there and he gave me a course on how it's done. It's fascinating with the equipment they have nowadays. You don't even have a guy. All you have to do is set up the machine. You know, you can have the best machine in the world. If you don't know how to program it or set it up, you'll never get it done right. But having a good machine and a good operator, you get everything perfect. Okay, let me torque down the last cap that I've got here. Here we go. And always use the same way, 90-degree, when you torque down any bolts. You know, some people go like this, some people go like that. Always use the same 90-degree. So this way you're all consistent on all the torquing. There we go. And one good thing about it, you guys, you've got the 5 caps in place. And look, it turns free. Now, before I install the rear seal, I forgot to mention one thing. Let's check the in-play, the purpose of the thrust bearing. Okay, here we go. Well, you know, in many cases, okay, let me, I want to see if I can see any movement, okay, George? This is a dial indicator with a magnetic base. All I want to do is make a reading on our in-play of the crankshaft. Now where's the backwards and forward position. Now if you guys don't have a dial indicator, sometimes a filler gauge could do the job putting it between, but it's kind of tight between the bearing. But this is what I recommend. Use a dial indicator, it's very simple. Let me put this in one position. Okay, here we go. I got about 6 thou. That's all I need, and it's perfect, 6 thou. So I got about 6 thou of in-play of the crank, which is within factory specifications. So that's good. So for this reason, the main caps are not coming out. And now we proceed to the rear seal. Many people ask me, how do you install the rear seal on the big block Mopars? You know, it's not the best design from Chrysler, but we're going to do our best. Here we are, the rear seal. You have to clean the rear retainer. The factory retainer is right here. I just wanted to tell you guys that, see this part? You know, I take a piece of sandpaper, maybe 60 or 80, and I just pass it a few times with that. What does it do is makes it square and also brings down the retainer maybe a couple of thou, maybe 3-4 thou. Just like so, like this, on a sandpaper. Then you have it washed. So now you're ready to do the assembly. Here we go. First of all, make it easier, especially when you're doing a rear seal when it's in the car, or let's say the engine's in the car and you're working upside down. I got these 2 bolts, they're 3/8 18. I got them about 5-6 inches long. You cut off the heads, you put some slots in it, and I use them as a guide, like so. To make our job easier. Then I do this. Now, don't forget, this is a contact metal to metal. There's no gasket here, so you got to put a silicone. You got to make sure that this surface and the surface of the block are super, super clean, all right? Here we go. I start with the, here we go. I start with the block right over here, like so. Right here in those corners. This is very important. This is a very important area. I'm using acetone or thinner. Let me just keep changing my Q-tips. I'm doing it like so here. Okay. This is a very important part. I'm going to give it a few seconds to dry. You don't want no, but once you have a little bit of oil in your casting between what you want to do, just a little bit of oil. You could put all the silicone or the best silicone in the world, will not make a seal. So now we got it clean. I'm going to use one more to clean this one here, like so. Always clean it right before you do the job, like so. Then I use the other side of the Q-tip. I'll do this side again. Okay, now, then we take right stuff. I use the stuff, Permatex, pretty good stuff. Like I said, I've used them before and it works for me all the time. Then we have our end seals. The end seals are press fit. They go on the side. They go right here. But this is going to take a little challenge. I might have to put a little bit of oil. I'll show you guys how it's done. You see, it's above the surface. So you don't need to put silicone here. But putting this in, it's going to be a tight fit. I'll get to it in a minute. Here we go. So now that we got that clean, I got to put silicone. Now you don't need a lot. Don't forget, the gap there is like a paper thin. Now, here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the seal in place because I want to make sure it sits on both ends with equal pressure. Here we go. I'm going to drive it in like so. There you go. You see it right there? It should center itself as I press down into the press the cavity inside. Let's see what happens. Here we go. I might have to do this a couple of times. I do not know. Let's see how it goes. Oh, there. Now we didn't force it, just pressed it on and I felt like it fell in place. So now we take out our guides. These are custom made, you guys. If you can make a pair, working underneath the car, doing a rear seal, you need this to help you out. Then we take our bolts that belong only for the rear retainer, like so. I'll get my ratchet. Here it is. It's a 3/8 12 corner. Now, did I do the job right? Correct? Do not know. On a dyno, we're gonna find out. Now, before I torque it down, what I do sometimes is, now it's almost sat down. I do this, and then I do this vibrations. Look. Why? See if the two seals, you know, sometimes you could be sitting like that. So it causes little vibrations so that with the vibrations, they move and they sit tight together, both ends to butt. So here I go. So I'm going to tighten it at the same time while I'm torquing it down. Or tighten it down, I should say. I've done this many times. It's worked for me many times. So let's hope it does well. This is about 35 foot-pounds. I'm not going to use a torque wrench because I've done it 100 times, so I know what it takes. And there we have it. I installed the seal. I put the silicone. I pressed in the blue ends. It should work. It should work. Like I said, it's a hit and miss. Sometimes I miss out on 20% of the time, but I'm hoping that this goes through it because once you assemble the engine and you detail it, and then it leaks oil, you got to loosen all the bolts, remove the gasket. After it's painted well, then you got to do it again and hopefully it doesn't leak. but I've done this many times. It's worked for me 80 to 90%. So when we get on the dyno, we're going to see how it goes. Chevrolet has the rear cap with the built-in seal, which is a better design, like the 340 small block Mopar. But on the big block Mopars, you got a retainer, which I'm not fond of, but we have no choice. That's the design. Some people go out and buy aluminum billet retainers. Sure, they work, but I've worked with a lot of older ones and they've worked for me. Put a new seal, make sure it's clean, make sure it's gapped right, and we're good. And I'm sure a lot of people out there with big block Mopars have the same issue in many, many cases. We do our best, and you know what? Give it our best shot. From the factory, these came with rope seals. Then Chrysler did a bulletin on replacing the rear seals with a Viking seal. That is exactly what we replaced it with. And Felpro makes the exact same seal. And this is the one I've used, and it works for me. So like I said, it's a hit and miss, but don't blame it on the seal. It's the way Chrysler designed it. And you know, as you guys can see on the block, I have the core plugs installed. I just wanted to let you guys know that I use a big socket with an extension Magnum in with a hammer. But I also use a sealer, again, made by Permatex. It's a gasket sealer, but it works for me all the time. It gets very tacky. I put it on the block, I put it on the outside of the core plug or freeze plug, force them in place to the right depth like you see here, and you should be good 100%. Then, you know what? There's another thing I want to install. Since I'm here, I got the block upside down. There's also a push rod that works for the mechanical fuel pump. It works off the cam, but I'll put it in right now since it's on the table. It's a little push rod, like so. This works off the cam, but it's got two ends. It's got two ends, okay? One of them shows like it's a mechanical pump touch surface. The other one has a smoother finish, okay? Now this is very smooth. That's the side that goes. It's a used piece. I'm putting back the same used push rod. If you put a new one, it makes no difference. But this is the same one I'm putting back. This is nice and smooth. That smooth part is going to go towards the cam. The bottom part, which is the mechanical, goes like so. So all I'm going to do is grease it up a little bit. I'm going to show how it's done. You just grease it like this. And of course on the cam, you put it like this. It's going to go right through the block. It's going to end up right here on the cam. Then when you put the cam in, when you have the block up, the push rod comes down so it will not be in your way. And remember, any plugs, like for example this one, oil galleries are blocked off, do not need a cap with Teflon coating on it. On this side, because it's an external mounted plug, you have to put this. The same goes for the two in the back of the block. So this is how you install it. And you know it's not going to leak any oil. There you go. If you don't have that push rod, your mechanical pump will not work. Or if the push rod wears out, it happened to a customer of mine years ago. Came here and he goes, Nick, I remember he came here with a 71 Roadrunner. He replaced fuel pump, I think fuel tanks, fuel lines, played with carburetors. He told me the whole story of what they've done. So before he brought the car here, I told him, I think I know what your problem is. And he also had to replace the fuel pump 2 times. I told him, it sounds like your push rod is worn out for the fuel pump. And he goes, what do you mean push rod? Bring the car in, I'll show you. Car came in, we had the push rod, the fuel pump removed, we had the push rod removed, and before you know it, the push rod of the fuel pump was a 1/4 inch shorter. I took it out, replaced it with the fuel pump, I replaced it with a new push rod, put the same pump back on, and his problems were fixed. But before I put the push rod, you want to make sure as you turn the cam, it goes up and down. You want to make sure the cam is not worn out. There's a lobe on the cam just for the fuel pump. So it was going up and down on his car. I figured the push rod was too short. I took another push rod, measured it, and his was a 1/4 inch too short. Placed it, put the pump back on, drove it, all good. This is educational stuff, you guys. These are stuff that are simple things. I'm just trying to help all the viewers, all these guys that work back home. Little things that might help you. Sometimes the smallest thing is your biggest problem. A lot of people change parts for nothing. I'm just trying to make things go easier for you guys. Okay, after all that said and done, now let's install. I got a piston. I got 7 more to put in, but I'm going to install one piston to show you what it takes and how you go about it. Now we're going to take piston number 1, cylinder number 1, which is the driver's side first piston. So we turn the block over like so, put the deck flat, and of course you're going to put the journal down. And now this is what we need to start with. First of all, now you got new piston rings. The pistons I've ordered for this engine are 30 overbore. But when you buy your piston rings, you can buy 30 oversized or 35. But in this case, nothing that I need to do blueprinting of piston gaps. I just wanted a standard ring, 30 over with a 30 over piston. So in other words, it won't need any capping. Here, let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. We take a top ring, like so, out of the box, and this is the dot, or with the top. That always faces the top of the engine, okay? We know this is the first ring. I put a white paint mark there so it could show me this is the top ring. So what I do is, I put it in place here, like so. I bring it down about halfway. So I use the piston to push it down, like so. And this piston ring company, it's marked to put 3 to 4 thou for every inch. So at a 4.350 bore, I'm looking at 17 to 18 thou gap. Now you don't want to go smaller than that because when the engine heats up, if that ring's butt, they're going to start damaging your cylinder wall. So now we've got the ring squared off in the cylinder. I got my filler gauge with an 18 thou, and then I want to see if it falls into the gap. If you guys can take a look, just slightly snug. I did the same for the second ring, also the same gap. So I don't have to re-gap the rings. If I have to re-gap the rings, you use a piston ring gapper, which is right here. This is electric. I think I've shown it one time in another video, I think. But anyways, we're not going to file any rings on this because 30 over piston, 30 over ring, you don't have to gap them. But it's good to check. Then I'm going to take out the ring, and there's a sequence how you install it in the cylinder bore. Let me just show you before I put it in on the piston. Here we go. This is the front of the engine. We're doing cylinder number 1. So, if you can take a look, every piston is marked front. This one has an arrow, okay? So we know this is cylinder number 1. I think I've marked them somewhere. Yes, I have. This is cylinder number 1. I'm going to show you one piston demonstration. So here, this is the front. I also had a painted connector rod yellow, so they'll know that when they press it on for me, this is not a free floating piston. You can see there's no locks here. It's press fit, so that rod is heat treated, pressed in through the pin to install. I said earlier, the holes are made in-house to get extra lubrication. And there we have it. Okay, so if you guys take a good look, the bearing's offset to the right. That is the reason, indication, I have it painted so that you have the connector rod and the piston in the correct installation. Because if you look down on the crank, right there, you see that you need a gap on the forward side, on the driver's side, facing forward, where the crank weight is. And vice versa to the other side. So if I had the pistons on the other side, then that offset bearing would be towards the back. So after all that, now let me show you what's going on here. Here is the diagram how the rings are supposed to be installed, right here. Here's the front of the engine, this way, like I've marked it here. Then we take our oil ring. Our oil ring is 3 pieces. Look what's here, right here, the oil ring gap. So in other words, facing the front of the engine, this is going to be at standing on this side, 12 o'clock position. Then you got the 2 rails. You put them like a letter Y. Like in other words, like that and like that. So you see we have a letter Y. Okay, this is installation procedure on many engines in many cases. Okay, you see that? Like it shows on the diagram. Then you got piston ring number 2. Again, they mark top. I checked the gap, it's great. Now that ring is going to be towards 6 o'clock, like so, which is the left side. Sitting in the driver's seat, it's on the left side. And this goes for both banks, left bank, right bank. Then we have the top ring, which is at 12 o'clock. They're 180 degrees apart. And then you do the same for the right bank also. So let me get started with one piston, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And also, I just wanted to tell you guys, the thrust side is where the top ring ends up. The thrust side is always on the right-hand side of the cylinder. In other words, on the driver's side, the thrust side is towards the intake manifold. And on the passenger side, the thrust side is towards the exhaust manifold. So in other words, sitting in the driver's seat, they're both on the right-hand side. So the thrust right is up on the left side and on the right, on the lower side, on the passenger side. It is very important that you don't mix them up, because your first ring is your compression ring. Your second ring is called maybe a second compression ring or a scraper that pushes the oil down the wall as the cylinder goes down. Then you have the oil ring, which is the biggest groove on the bottom, which lubricates the wall and the rings itself. So you cannot mix them up. But in the matter of positioning in any position, will it do any harm? I don't think so, because I believe that while the engine's running, after so many times, after so long, they tend to turn a bit. So there's no big loss there. But the most important thing is that you put the right ring, correct ring, in the right groove, and if it says top, or if it has a dot, put it towards the top, not upside down, because they're designed to only go in one way. If you have no markings at all, then it could be either way. So I'm going to install the piston on the bench vise to make it easier to install. So I'm going to bring all the rings with me. I'm going to take a marker. I'm going to show you how it's done. It's very simple. There we go. So just to show you guys, this is the front. And this is this is now cylinder number 1, like I said. Cylinder number 1. And this is 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And this is the front. Here we go. And then I'm going to just put where my rings are going to be here. 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Then you got your 8 o'clock. And you got your 4 o'clock. I'll give you the details as we go along. Now we take our oil ring expander. The two butts go at the 12 o'clock position towards the thrust side, like so. Now we got the two rails. This is where, now, the gap on the expander is at 12 o'clock. These two rails, one's gonna go 8 o'clock, one's gonna go 4 o'clock. It does not matter if one is up or down, it does not matter. So here we go. So this is what I do. I put it here, like so, and I spiral it right across, like so. So now this is at the 8 o'clock position, and on the other one, we put it at 4 o'clock, like so. But most important, you gotta make sure that these are butting together like so, and nothing exceeds the surface of the piston. So now we got the oil ring in place. Now we got to install the second ring. The second ring is this one here, or you could call it a scraper. Now I use the tool, which is a piston ring spreader. You don't want to spiral it, but you might break the ring. So we're going to go take it easy. And this one's going to be set at 6 o'clock, the opposite side of the thrust side. So here we go, like so. Put in the second groove. There we go. So that's at 6 o'clock. And the most important thing is you got to make sure that the rings, when you get the paper with the rings, they tell you that how deep they are, and make sure you have the right clearance. But in many, many cases, they fit perfect. If it's a 564 piston, you buy rings for 564, standard size, they should be straight installation, no issues. Now we go to the top ring. And of course, it's marked top again. I put some white paint there just to show that this is my top ring, because they're almost identical to the second ring. And in many cases, the second ring is black and the first ring is chrome. And in this set, like piston rings I got, they're both black. So we want to make sure we don't mix them up. And this one is the top groove, like so. Okay, put it in. And of course, the opening gap on that is going to be at 12 o'clock. And at 180 degrees from there, will be the second ring. like exactly what I've done here. This is exactly what I got. There you have it. The oil ring expander and rails. I just wanted to say that the oil ring and the rails could go either way. You know, the rails are flat. The oil expander is could go either way, and so are the rails. They're perfectly flat. So you put them either way you want, it'll do the job. Okay. So that goes for the oil ring. And don't forget, like I said earlier, the first ring and the second ring, very important that they're on the right side up and in the right groove. So we got our paperwork, get our piston over to the table, and I'll show you guys what it takes to install it. So first thing I do is, okay, we're gonna get my oil can. I'm gonna lubricate the rings like so. I'll let it sit for a while. I like to get them wet before I install it into a bore. And of course, I also put oil in my hands. I lubricate the wall a little bit with some oil like so. Doesn't take much, you know. Just want to make sure that the crosshatch has oil in the grooves to lubricate the rings pre-start. So there we go. So now, I'm going to put oil on the rings here, like so. Then I do this. I just twist them a bit, like so. Up and down. Then, of course, you put oil on the skirts, like so. Okay. Then you put in the wrist pin, like so. Putting oil everywhere has no harm. And then, of course, now we put oil in the bearing. And I wanted to say, the same goes for the connector rod bearings. There are 10 undersides. I've measured the journal. It is 10 undersides. The bearings are all marked 10. And we're not going to show you guys with a plastic gauge because I'm going to do it later on. But in the same sequence was done with the main bearings, you do one connector rod to measure with a plastic gauge to make your clearances. And again, you're looking for the same number, 1, 1.5, maybe 2, and you're good. So now, before you install the connector rod, you want to put some boots on so you don't scratch the crank that you had just regrinded and polished. So you put this in place. They're like a guide, like so. Okay. Then you have your sleeve. It's a tool. It's a 4.350 bore, which is a 30 over on a 4.320 standard bore. So 30 over means 4.350. So here's our guide for that. This is tapered. So when you put the piston in, it squeezes the piston rings in as it goes down into the cylinder bore. Let me show you guys. Always make sure that the arrow is facing forward of the engine. Here we go. Top ring, thrust side, 180 degrees apart. On the other end is the second ring. And of course we have our oil ring. The the expander on this side and the two rails at 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, like so. Okay, here we go. I've lubricated everything. And this is something you take your time because you don't want to nick your rings. Here we go. This is going to fall in place slowly. Make sure every ring is in the right place, like so. You see, as you squeeze in the piston rings, it's going to fall into place. There you go. Now we're just going to tap it. Make sure your sleeve is nice and tight towards the deck. And then you do this slowly, slowly. See that? Et voila, we're in place. Now, I'm just gonna bring it right down to the crankshaft. And I'm gonna make sure it's guided perfectly on the journal. Here we go. That is the reason why we put the boots, so if you don't line it up good, you don't want to scratch the crankshaft. There, we bottomed out. Now I'm going to turn the engine over, and of course we're going to install the cap. I'm just going to back up the crank just a bit. This is the reason why I put the bolt in place. Just back it up a little bit so I can have more room. I remove the connector rod bolt boots, like so. Then I got the cap. And you guys could do the same with the plastic gauge. Same principle, just like we did with the main cap, main bearings. See that notch here? That notch there? These ends together. In this particular application, this type of engine, they have to be on the same side. Now we put the cap in place. Just tap it. You get some motor oil. Put it on the threads, like so. Want to make sure you get a good torque reading. Then we get the two nuts. There they are. And these are torqued down to 45 foot-pounds, like so. Then we got our torque wrench. We'll put a socket here. "45 foot-pounds, like so. Here we go. You know, you do a little bit on each side at a time. You don't bring one side down 45 and then jump to the other one. You bring it down gradually. You hear it snap? That's 45 foot-pounds. Okay, that's done. And you know, if it does this, you know you got your good clearance, because, you know, I will put a plastic gauge, but just to save time, you do the same thing like I said before. So now, this is good. Let's see if it, I'm going to turn the engine over. And now I just want to see with these new pistons the deck height. I did not deck this block, and there is factory same connector rods. This is a 2.061 compression height. In other words, the center of the pin to the top of the piston is your compression height, or your compression distance. This is a 2.061. Now, it's almost to the top. It's not way below. It should be maybe 15 to 25 thou below the deck, especially when the deck is not cut or milled. So here we go. I'm just gonna get my wrench, turn it over, like so. Let me just clean it now, make it look good. I'll get my dial indicator. I think I need to jam the nut a little bit. So here we go. There we go. Let me get my dial indicator. And this is very important, you guys. This is part of a compression ratio measurement or calculations. So when you want to know the deck height, it could be, I many times have the engine zero deck with the piston right leveled with it. But in this case, I'm just building it as a factory original engine like they did at the assembly plant. Yes, they assemble them a lot faster than I do, but you know, and those days they didn't have no CNC machining at all back in the day. So here we go. Now we got to find top dead center. We're going to look for the highest point. When the dial indicator turns the opposite direction, we're at the highest point. Here we go. Watch this. We're going to stop right there. That's where top dead center is. So now, here we go. Watch this. You put it at 0. Now we're going to bring it to the center of the piston. Make sure the connector rod is forward, because, you know, the connector rod might be a little bit on a slang because the other connector rod next to it is not there. So I push the rod forward towards the journal. And now let's measure our deck height. Here we go. It's at 0, measuring off the deck. Now we go to the center of the piston. What do we got? We got about 26 thou. So this piston is 26 thou below the deck. Now, if you're looking for performance, it's not going to make power. Now, do I care? Not really. I just want the factory horsepower on this, which is a 375 horsepower with a 20 thou gasket. And the heads are not going to be milled. I'm going to put it together, which I only milled the heads about 10 thou just to make sure they're nice and straight. I usually mill them a lot more than that. But like I said, I'm not looking for performance. I'm just building it as it came from the factory. You know, these are not JE pistons. I've used a lot of JE pistons on all my customers' engines. They're 20 thou below the deck. That's not too bad. This is not what I wanted. It's 26 thou below, but these are the pistons I've had for a while. These are made by Seal Power. And for some reason, the 26 thou below, I don't care. I'm just looking for an original built engine. So now, the other 7 are going to follow in the same way. Now let's go to a camshaft installation. So now we're going to put the block straight up, like so. And we all know that the cam is going to go in here. So this flat surface has to be lubricated, like so. Okay, I'll show you why. Let me get the timing chain that was supplied by Melling also, just like the camshaft. I got it right here. This is the timing chain I'm using. It is a double roller from Melling. It's a good quality piece. I've used them many times from Melling Performance. Okay. And then it's a double roller, as you guys can see. It's a double roller. And this is a single bolt camshaft. The 6-packs and the Hamies came with a 3-bolt. Full 40, the regular 440 and the 440 Magnum came with a single bolt. So we're going with the same way. And I also want to show you guys that Melling also gave me a camshaft, practically original. And there's the specs right there. It's a Melling Performance cam. And they knew I was building an engine, and they supplied me all the stuff I need to build my engine. So I got to give Melling a big thank you. So this is a flat tappet hydraulic camshaft, which I'm going to install. I was telling you earlier about cam bearings. You could see if you look at all the journals, number 4 has 2 openings. This is an oil passage. Now as the cam is turning, it feeds oil from the main, which is at 6 o'clock, then feeds it on one cylinder head. Then as it turns, keeps turning, this one lines up at 6 o'clock where the oil feed is, then it feeds oil to the other cylinder head. So that's why when you prime an engine, you can't get oil at the cylinder heads. You got to keep turning the crank slowly until you got it lined up. Then on one side you get oil, then you keep turning the crank a bit, then you get to oil on the other side. So it shoots oil shots at a time. It's not a full feeding oil gallery. Okay, so then we get our special braking grease. Now we're gonna have to lubricate the cam. Here we go. I've got all kinds of assembly lube. I got from Melling, I got from Driven, I got them all. So this is a flat tappet camshaft. We're gonna have to put in some braking grease like I'm using here, like so. You know, I've had this shaft for more than a few years now, and I kept telling Melling I'm gonna do a video on your products on my engine. Now this is my personal car, my personal favorite car, and for me this is very important that it gets done good. And I'm also doing it as a favor for the viewers, what it takes to build a basic 440 engine with what you have at home. So here we go. You gotta go in nice and slowly, like so. It's very important that you lubricate every cam lobe, because this is a flat tappet cam. Once this engine goes on a dyno, we got to run it for 20 minutes at 2,000 RPM so the lifters and the lobes sit in perfect. So I'm going to put a bolt as a handle right here. So when I put in the cam, it's a lot easier. And like I said, let's lubricate every bowl, every lobe. You got to put on the gear also, like so. And of course you got a lobe there for the mechanical fuel pump. So we have to lubricate that also, like so. Everything has to be broken in. Turn it over. You want to lubricate the lobes you have to lubricate the lobes 360 degrees. And then you do the same for the bottom of the lifters when you install them in the lifter bores. This is very important that you use the correct grease, because this grease is pretty thick. It stays there and it's designed to work with the lifter to break in properly. So no, I don't take shortcuts on this at all. You know, it is to wipe out a cam and then take apart the engine just to replace a cam. It's a big mess. You don't want to go there. So here we go. And another important thing is, once you put the cam in, after you put in the 5 cam bearings, I use an old cam that I use as a tool, that when you put it in place, it turns free. Like so. And we take our big timing chain. You can see that's a flat surface here. So we need to lubricate that too at the same time. It's going to sit on the block, so you don't want it to wear out. Now the top gear for the cam, you got to put it at 6 o'clock. Like so. Typical simple job. See that cam is turning? If it turns by the fingers, you're good. So now we know that the piston top dead center, our keyway is going to be at 12 o'clock on the lower gear. Let me go get it. There is something I want to demonstrate here. We got a lower gear that you could play with the timing on mechanical timing on the chain. 0 is straight up like so. Okay, there's your dot, there's your dot. But then again, you could advance the cam or retard the cam to play with different torque readings or horsepower readings at different RPMs. But I'm not looking for anything special. This is what's called playing around with degreeing the cam. I'm not going to do it in this case. It's not a racing engine. It's not a special project. So I'm just going to put it straight up. So what you do here is you put the chain on. I'm going to put it with the circle, which is straight up, no advance at all. You got 4 degrees advance and you got 4 degrees retard, which I'm not going to use in this case. Like I said, I'm building a simple 440. And here we go. So now I do this. I take it off again. I line up my chain. There we go. Am I on there? I am. Let me just, now, we got a special washer here with a special bolt right here. It's a 5/8. It's a hardened bolt, grade 8, with a wavy spring type of washer. So we put some Loctite on it. I use, again, Permatex. They have good stuff. The blue one is good enough. We do like so. Okay. People are going to ask, why don't you degree the cam? This is my personal engine. I'm not going to degree the cam. I have faith in that the gears are correct. The cam is in the right position. I'm putting it straight up. Like I said, I'm only looking for factory numbers. I'm sure some of you are going to say, oh, Nick, why don't you degree it in? That's another procedure. We'll do that another time on a client's engine. Okay. I'm going to have to torque that down. Let me make sure my marks are lined up. Here we go. They are lined up. You can see it. 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Lined up perfect. And it's at the 0 mark. So we're not advanced the cam at all or retarded it. I put it the way the factory did. And now I got to torque down that bolt. We're going to torque it down to, I believe it's 35 foot-pounds. I believe it is, but I'll look into it. You can see that the crankshaft turns free. What I do in this case, I do this. I turn the engine upside down. Take a block of wood, like so. Jam it on a crank journal like so, to jam it, and there you go. Okay, 35 foot-pounds. Then of course, let's back up the crankshaft, like so. Take out our wooden block. There we go. Put this on the side. Let me turn the engine over one more time. We got our camshaft in place. We've got our timing chain in place. Now one important thing to do, a lot of people do not do this, is you got to lubricate the chain, like so. All it takes is a few tabs of oil, like so. Just wet the gears. It's a very important item. You don't want it to start dry. You know, the oil gets lubricated by splash, but I want to make sure there's oil on the chain before I get it turned over. Then as you turn it over with the wrench, it lubricates. And then another item that's very important is the oil slinger, which is right here. Some people have it, some people don't know what it is. This is a shield that protects the oil seal from leaking oil in front of the front oil seal behind the timing chain cover. There you go. This is called an oil slinger. There it is. So now I'm going to put the timing cover on with a new seal when the time comes, but here we have it. So there you have it. I've shown you how to install the crankshaft, the rear seal, and of course the one piston the way it is with the rings and how it's assembled and what we've done to the piston, drilling it, press fit, directions, installation of the rings, and of course the camshaft and the timing chain and core plugs and so forth. This is what, after I install the 7 pistons, this is called a short block assembly. We're going to get in the future later on with the cylinder heads. I got to assemble the cylinder heads. Then I'm going to show you how we install them, and then we put the lifters in the block, the push rods, and so forth. So you guys, it's very simple. There it is. You know, you have a few simple tools back home. You got the right parts: crank, rods, pistons, rings, camshaft, timing chain, core plugs. It's all there. This is going to be called a short block assembly. Yeah, I can't wait to get this assembled. And of course, we're going to do a video on the installation on the cylinder heads, push rods, lifters, head gaskets, and hopefully I get my oil pump, timing chain cover, and so forth. And there's going to be a lot more pieces after that to install to detail it the way it came from the factory. So you guys make sure you subscribe and press the like button so I can put it on the dyno so you guys can see what it does. And thanks for watching us here on Nick's Garage. And thanks for spending some time with me here in the engine room on my personal 440. Till next time. And you guys, if you look down below the video, we have a whole bunch of merchandise that you guys can buy. So whatever you like, buy it, love it, wear it, and enjoy it. And help spread the word of Nick's Garage. And if you have some time, check out our Patreon page. We have extra content and you guys can watch it and take it from there. And we'll see you next time.